Hey, what's up guys? Today on this episode of VFX Studio, I'm going to be showing you how I created the Electro VFX short. Now there's 4 different shots in this clip, so I'm just going to go one by one, and in order to keep the tutorial on the shorter side, I'm going to assume that you know basic compositing techniques, like masking and keyframing. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and I'll explain more in depth. Let's go ahead and get started with shot number 1, and I'm picking right up from the displacement tutorial that I uploaded a week ago. On the picture itself, I added a couple of flashing lens flares and a color correction wheels to give it a bluer look. I made sure this picture filled the screen, then I created a 3D camera and keyframed the X, Y, and Z rotation to look around as I saw fit. Here's the perspective view of what that looks like. The zoom at the end can be controlled under Lens, Zoom, and it works like a real camera so it doesn't affect the position. Next I added a grade with color correction to change this building's lights from yellow to blue, because the next shot shows a blue building in the back and I wanted to keep continuity. After that I created a solid with fractal noise and keyframed the rotation to move around. I was going for a smoky look that could be just above the ground in order to give the shot more movement. I made it 3D and drew a circle mask, then dropped the opacity and set it to screen. The clip of me floating is its own composite shot, and the way I achieved the levitating look was by filming my top half acting like I normally would, then suspending myself between 2 chairs for my legs. It looks a bit ridiculous, but if you get it right, it can be a cool effect. After putting the 2 layers together, I realized that the orientation of my legs didn't quite match up to my top half, but I knew it would be a small layer, so it didn't matter too much. I applied a Chroma Key Effect to both and masked around them to get rid of unnecessary footage, and I also had to apply 2 masks to my feet when they went out of frame. I then duplicated my top layer and masked around my hands and face, then added a blue tint to it using the color correction wheels. I made another fractal noise, keyframed some movement, and masked that as well, and set that to add. It gave a nice smoky glow texture to my skin. Back here in the first scene, I added a zoom blur when the camera gets close up, as well as lens dirt and some shake. I found that turning the speed of the shake down helps it to be more realistic, and I had mine set to 15 with a speed of 0.06. I also turned down the motion blur, because it was giving the shot unnecessary blur even when the camera wasn't moving too much. Finally, I added my overall color correction consisting of bleach bypass, some glow and brightness and contrast, and I was done with the first shot. Okay, moving right along to scene 2 here. I started with this background picture with a blur added. Next I had myself on the green screen, again with a mask around it and some light wrap set to the background, and you can see the effect of that here. I did pretty much the exact same thing as scene 1 to make myself blue, along with the fractal noise. And for this I found that setting the type to swirl looked the best. Then I added a flare down in the bottom right to blend the 2 images together, and on top of that a light rays effect that I positioned on the white spot of this window. This was cool because you can see when my black hoodie passes in front of it, the light dims, so it gives a kind of volumetric look to it. I then added some shake and my color correction, and I was done with scene 2. Scene 3 is nearly identical to scene 2 in terms of putting it together. I masked myself and applied the chroma key, as well as made myself blue and added the fractal noise to my hands. I did a rack focus effect by keyframing a blur on my layer to go up and at the same time the blur on the background to go down. That's pretty much the only difference with this shot. Everything else has the same procedure. Scene 4 is the same in terms of putting myself in the shot. This background image here did have a displacement map, which I found wasn't really necessary in the end. I blurred the background and scaled it up behind me. I then duplicated my layer and flipped it to the left side of the building and added a waves distortion effect. Then I added a grade with several lens flares, including the golden one in the bottom right. Next I added shake and some anamorphic lens flares to help match the look of the original movie. The anamorphics start off looking like this, and you can change the direction under streak 1, orientation. I also shortened the length and blurred them so that they wouldn't be as sharp. The lightning was its own composite shot, and I started off with a plane with a lightning and electricity effect on it. I stretched the 2 ends to the edges of the layer, and set the plane to add. You can see the lightning animates itself to grow, and that is a keyframed growth property under the End tab. The wave scale controls how straight the lightning is, and the twitch controls how distorted the lines are. I added a couple of branches for variety and set the direction towards the end of the layer. I also made sure the end tips of the lightning faded out by using the width property for a smoother composite. Next I duplicated the layer and turned the wave scale down so that it looked more like branches. This was just so that the lightning wasn't all the same. I added my own glow effect and added color by changing the per channel intensity. I knew I would be adding more glow in the scene later, so I kept it to a minimum. The plasma was made of one particle simulator with 3 emitters. The first orange plasma here was an emitter with a spherical shape and set to the width and height of the lightning, which can be changed under Shape, Scale. I used my own texture, which was a fractal noise with an irregular mask in its own composite shot. I can set this to be the texture under Source, Layer. I made the particle life short and erratic, and made them fade in and out through the alpha lifetime panel. The sparks and blue plasma had relatively the same settings, I just used a different texture. And all that was for the sparks was a composite shot with a solid and radial gradient, and for the plasma I used the Aurora Borealis texture. It's important to set all of these to the Add Blend mode so that they appear bright. I used a random color gradient in the lifetime panel for the plasma, and that means that any one of these colors could be used to color the texture. The last layer was a fractal noise masked to the size of the composite and tinted blue. Here you can see the lightning added on top, and I had to be careful of the orientation since the lightning is not a 3D effect like the particle simulator, so if you're looking at it the wrong way, it'll appear flat in 2D. I then positioned these in my scene with the option 3D unrolled, and after adding sound and final color correction, I was done with my Electro VFX short. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I was really proud with how this effect turned out. Check out the unedited short by clicking on screen now, and feel free to leave questions in the comments below. Help out your friends by sharing the video or like if you enjoyed. I'd also like to see what you guys are working on, so post your links either in the comments or in a message to me. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.